Anaheim Mayor Tom Tait doesn't wear a cape or have an S on his chest, but maybe he should. He's upended Anaheim politics, stood up to Disney and the Angels, hung out with the Dalai Lama, and recently he even pulled a panic kid out of the ocean while wearing his Clark Kent clothes. But after 8 years, he's term limited out. What's ahead for Anaheim and for him? An exit interview with Tom Tait next on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by
each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
All your life, people talk about what's best for you. But to most people, it's just that. Talk. Unless you're with Memorial Care, a healthcare system devoted to one important thing: what's best for you.
Just complicate things for everybody.
Hi, I'm Rick Reiff, and I'm talking with Anaheim Mayor Tom Tait. Tom, always great to have you on, and thanks for coming on for what's, I guess, an exit interview, if you will.
Thank you.
So let's go back a few years. The city is giving $267 million, $250 million in tax breaks to Disneyland for a luxury hotel. Amid fears that the Angels are going to leave Anaheim, they're on the verge of approving a big land transfer to the baseball team. The council's resisting a move to abolish at-large voting and go to district elections for the council. And you're a coalition of one. You're getting outvoted on all those things, and you're getting humiliated. You've been stripped of some of your powers. Your staff and budget have been reduced. So let's flash forward to today. Disney has given up the subsidies on that hotel, which now they may or may not build, and I'll talk to you about that. The land transfer with the Angels are out, but they are here at least until 2029. District elections are now in place, and you're part of the majority coalition. So is it a case of he who laughs last laughs best, or what?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned district elections, because that was the big game changer in Anaheim. Before it was at large, which meant really money played almost was the entire game as far as getting elected. Yeah. Now with districts, you can have people who are from the community, have history in the community, and actually have a chance against all that money. So and over the last couple of cycles, the majority, I believe, switched towards the people, away from special interest, and it's a great thing for Anaheim. So, so you've seen things that have happened in Anaheim that have really gone towards a shift towards the neighborhoods. Disney recently, to their great credit, did the right thing and canceled these subsidy agreements that they had. A couple of them, one was a 45-year exemption from taxation. The other one was for that hotel that you mentioned. That's a huge thing, and I really want to commend Disney for doing the right thing. They felt, as I did too, that those agreements were really toxic to the underlying relationship between the city and the company.
Of course, you know, there are many people who suggest Disney's intent in that may not have been quite that magnanimous, that they were facing a ballot issue this November that would have, because of those deals that you just mentioned, would have required them to pay a $18 and then escalating up from there minimum wage to its workers. It has some workers at Disneyland that make considerably less than that, and that was really their intent. But do you think you've used the term reset button, that there's a reset now with Disney? Do you really think that that's the case?
I do, and you've seen it in Disney's really coming a long way with a number of their unions, and I believe, you know, and soon, if
by the time this show airs, it actually come to terms with the folks that change the bed and wash the dishes and kind of some of the lowest paid groups or people.
So Disney has, I think, a different attitude at Disney about really desire to pay their people more and closer to that living wage. And so anyway, all those good things are happening, and so why Disney decided to tear up the agreements, I take them at their word that they felt that they were toxic.
Now, have you had any? Have you sat down yet with the president of Disneyland and had lunch, or has there been any kind of peace pipe back and forth? Any communications?
Well, we've met before. They decided that, and we've talked on the phone a number of times, and we have a great relationship, and we had a great relationship before they did this. He's I think a very
great
good
relationship.
president.
They were funding campaigns against you. I mean, But I mean, how often do you talk? When's the last time you talked with an official at Disneyland?
A couple weeks ago. So it's when they talk before that, though, before that reset button, it was actually pretty rare. So with them tearing up those agreements, it really it's a new day in Anaheim, and I think the relationship is getting off to a great start.
Okay, so now a lot of speculation because of the loss of those subsidies. I think most people think they will not build this luxury hotel. They may build, instead of a 4-star, a 3-star hotel or something like that. What's your sense? Do you have any sense of what they plan to do?
Well, if a hotel makes sense for Disney, they'll build a hotel without a subsidy, or they'll build something else and do something else. But think about this: you've got 25 million people coming to Disneyland. There is no better place probably in the world to build a hotel than on Disneyland property, and a place that really doesn't need a subsidy. So if Disney, if it makes sense business-wise, which I would imagine it does, I'm sure they'll build a hotel, but maybe they want to build something else that will make better sense, and certainly we'll support that.
What kind of balance is there? Because some people are concerned that if you alienate Disney. Now, presumably, they're not going to close Disneyland. It's there, but that they don't invest as heavily in it. They don't do those things if they feel there's a negative climate, that they're going to be taxed heavily, whatever they do. How do you respond to that? Are you concerned that maybe you hurt that relationship?
I think the relationship was hurt because of those agreements, and that's certainly, City of Anaheim, we have 360,000 people. We have to provide police and fire services, civic upkeep. We need every penny we can get. And I think that was realization by Disney that they're better off to have a healthy, vibrant, resilient host city, and for them to take money from us, actually in their long-term interest, wasn't a good idea.
So are those tourists that come into Disneyland, are they going to be paying more?
Well, if down the road, 20 years from now or whatever, if the people of Anaheim determine that they need more money to provide services, and certainly 25 million people coming in, they have to be safe, and we have to pay for those things like that. But if the people in Anaheim decide down the road that there's a need for a tax on the tourists, then they'll have the ability to do that.
You were against that, the moratorium on the ability of the city to tax, but you said you don't like taxes, and
Right.
You're not in favor at this point of any increased taxes on Disney?
No, I'm not, but that doesn't mean that there should be exemption that one company has over the people of Anaheim voting for a tax for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And I was against that.
Let's talk about another great institution of Anaheim that you've had some differences with, the Angels and owner Artie Moreno. When's the last time you talked with Artie Moreno?
Well, I've talked with the folks with the Angels, with John Carpino, the president, who really runs the operations there.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've talked to Artie, but I would say our relationship is good.
How about John? When's the last time you talked to John Carpino?
Maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And I think there's, the Angels are staying. I felt all along that they would stay, that they've got currently have the best deal, I think, in Major League Baseball. You have a stadium and 150 acres of parking lot where three freeways come together in Southern California. that's a good
Yeah,
deal.
you said all along you didn't like the idea that, I mean, just to really simplify it, that the city was going to give this land to the Angels, and you basically said, hey, wait, this is a great asset of the city. Let's be partners. And you just kind of toss out 50-50. We'll be 50-50 partners on it. Has anything come of that?
So the deal that I fought was, if you remember, it was the city council at that time, 4 or 5 years ago, thought it would be a good idea to really just literally give the parking lot and the stadium to the Angels, or actually to Arte Moreno. And I fought that, and fortunately that didn't go through. There's all sorts of upside that in a partnership with the city and the Angels, we could energize that property.
Such as, for instance, something you might do there?
Well, it's already entitled for a lot of residential, for 3 million square feet of commercial, 3 million square feet of retail. You look at LA Live around the Staples Center, there's type of things like that can happen by working together. And I think, after this out clause runs its course, then you'll see.
The out clause being that the Angels have until when?
2019, where they could leave.
So they still have a year that if they decide to change their mind, they can leave. But Arte Moreno has already said that they're staying.
Yeah. So it's sort of in the. If they want to develop that property, then the city is they're waiting to be partners with them.
Okay, but there haven't been any talks so far.
Not specific talks.
So
no.
you think maybe after this, as you say, once that deadline's passed.
Sure, and so that's the biggest real estate asset owned by the city, and it's worth, with the stadium, it's probably worth $1 billion. So I think there's ways to partner on that, 50-50 partnership, things like that, that would make sense.
Now, when's the last time you went to an Angels game?
It's been a while, but it's not because I'm not an Angel fan. It's because I'm so darn busy being mayor that
really?
I haven't had much time. But next season, I'll have a lot of free time.
Does
and I'll
the
be
city
going
still have a booth there, or a suite?
They do. There's a suite, but I essentially give that away to charities for them to raise money at silent auctions, things like that.
All right. So. Looking back 8 years, what's the, you already think, you mentioned the district elections, you're very proud of that. What's your biggest disappointment?
Let's see. There's long-term financially, there's issues with, even though Disney had canceled those agreements, those subsidy agreements, there's other hotels that have them, which are going to be a serious financial burden to the tune of about $450 million as those get built over 20 years. So I'm disappointed that those got passed over my objection. Pensions that's a long-term issue that the city's going to have to deal with. We have that's the unfunded pension liabilities, about $650 million.
The better part of $1 billion, and I think that works out to more than like $5,000 per Anaheim taxpayer that they're kind of on the hook. We've done shows on this, and sometimes people's eyes start glazing over when you start talking about pensions, but it's a huge thing. But Tom, you were mayor for 8 years. Did you do anything about that?
Well, I tried to do things about it, and the state doesn't allow much to be done on pensions, but it does allow on new employees to limit, especially public safety, to limit new employee pension formulas to something more reasonable. And I wasn't able to get the votes on those
so you
through the
weren't,
council.
You weren't able to do anything.
Unfortunately, didn't do.
And you're a fiscally kind of conservative guy. That's
super conservative guy.
So that when I asked you about disappointments, you brought it up. So I assume at least you're disappointed that you weren't able to do something, because it's tough. How did the rest of the council feel? They just don't want to take on the public employee unions?
It's very tough to vote against, frankly, police and fire unions, because we appreciate them, because what they do is frankly heroic in so many ways, but it also have to temper that with what we can afford. And certainly with new employees who aren't here yet, it actually makes our existing employees more secure by limiting to something more reasonable for future employees.
But that, so far, there hasn't been that happening.
So far that hasn't happened, and I wasn't able to get that through.
Okay. You at times have talked about the special interests in Anaheim, various special interests, including, entities like Disney. Sometimes those folks have been identified with Kurt Pringle, the former mayor, who was a good friend of yours before you became mayor.
And things happen, I guess.
Well, and he's a government relations has a government relations company. And tell me when's the last time you talked with Kurt?
Well, that's been a while. Maybe, gosh, I don't know, five years or so.
I think Kurt's position would be he felt that partnerships between the city and the big businesses like Anaheim are good for the city. They create wealth, they bring in revenue to the city coffers and all that kind of thing. What's happening there? Are they still going to fund campaigns against?
Well, I hope not. And part of the problem in the past has been massive amount of money being flooded into these elections by special interest groups, and that overwhelms so much of the voice. And fortunately, we have district elections that help, but still. Spending $2 or $3 million on a local election, and in the past Disney spending well over $1 million, throws the thing out of balance. And special interest groups throwing in that kind of money into a local election just doesn't is not a good thing. And I hope we don't see that in the future because it's not. The city should have vigorous debates on the districts about the future of the city, but where money isn't the driving force behind it.
Yeah. Even before Donald Trump came along to kind of tear apart the Republican Party, if you will, some of the issues that you and Kurt were having in Anaheim was doing that on a local level. I mean, you had Republican groups that were kind of, are they in the Tom Tait camp or the Kurt Pringle camp? You're both Republicans. Talk about your politics, because that coalition that I referred to, you have a coalition with the most liberal members of the council in Anaheim, and how do you do that? Because there are certain things that you're for that certainly, for example, Jose Moreno, who's one of the council members, seems like he's got a much different view of government and business and that sort of thing. How do you explain what you've been doing here? Well,
the big issue in Anaheim these last few years has been, I'll call it crony capitalism or cronyism, of picking winners and losers as far as businesses. I don't know how you can justify giving one company who is might be represented by a certain lobbyist or whatever, massive amounts of general fund money. When I talked about earlier, $700 million of luxury hotel subsidies to a city that we need every penny we could get. So those issues have brought people like Jose Moreno and myself together. But when you work with somebody, the mayor's a nonpartisan job, and the city council is a nonpartisan job. And when you work with people and you're open-minded and you look for solutions, that partisanship goes away. And I find myself working extremely well with Dr. Moreno, who I find to be a very thoughtful, level-headed colleague.
Okay, let me ask you one, because if from the conservative camp, one of the disappointments that I've heard voiced at times is the stance or the lack of stance that you've taken on specifically Palm Lane Elementary School, but also just charter schools in general. That there are people who feel that charter schools should be encouraged as an alternative to a struggling public education system, and that because of your relationship with certain other coalitions on the council, including Dr. Moreno, that you stayed out of that. You did not support Palm Lane Elementary, the push by those parents to turn a school into a charter school, and that you haven't, there's been disappointment. Gosh, we thought Tom would before what we're doing with charter schools, and he bagged on us.
Yeah, well, that's probably the narrative that folks would want to say. And charter schools.
Is it true or not?
Well, with Palm Lane, I felt whatever the parents decided, the parents should decide what type of school they have, and I always supported that. But it has to be. We had to make sure that it was the will of the parents and not, and that the count was correct and things like that. But that's a school district issue. It doesn't involve, really shouldn't involve the mayor. I'm a big supporter of our public schools. We have great public schools in Anaheim. And charter schools, before Palm Lane, you had the Goals Academy, and that came up about 2 years before, and I championed that. Jose Moreno, Dr. Moreno, was president of the Anaheim City School District Board, who voted for the charter school, the Goals Academy. So when people say that Dr. Moreno or myself are against charter schools, I championed and he voted for the very first one, which is thriving, the Goals Academy. So it's a nonprofit charter, locally grown. So I don't think to say that I'm against charter schools is not fair. You have great public schools. You have some public schools that maybe not be. You've got great charter schools. You got some charter schools that aren't great. So it's a case-by-case basis.
Case-by-case basis.
Sure.
Okay. Let's talk about mayor. There's going to be a mayor after you. Who? Do you have a horse in the race? Who are you supporting?
I'm not. I've endorsed anybody. There's some good candidates. I know Cynthia Ward has been with me on these issues for a long time and fighting in the trenches. She's very good. I know Ashley Aiken I've known her for years. I know her family. She's a very strong candidate. She believes also that you shouldn't pick winners and losers and subsidize these big hotels. So there's a couple of very good candidates out there.
I think you mentioned two of the three prominent candidates. Cynthia Ward, who is she a Republican?
She's a Republican.
Ashley Aiken is a Democrat.
Ashley Aiken is a Democrat.
And a great panelist, by the way. She's been on the show a number of times.
Wonderful person.
But you didn't mention Mr. Harry Sidhu, who's also a Republican, and I think he's garnering a lot of Republican endorsements.
Yeah. So again, this seat is a nonpartisan seat, but I differed with Harry early on these big subsidies. Harry voted for the Garden Walk subsidy of $158 million, and I strongly disagreed with him on policies such as that.
Okay, let's talk about just a little bit this fascinating story recently where I said you were in your Clark Kent clothes. You were in your street clothes. You have a place in Laguna. You have a place in Anaheim. You also have a place in Laguna Beach that's on the water. All right. So tell me what happened. You said it's one evening and you hear someone screaming.
Well, yeah. I'm glad I live in Anaheim. That's where my home is and will always be. But we have a little vacation condo in Laguna Beach, and my wife and I were there on a Friday, stopped by for the weekend, Friday evening, and I heard somebody who got caught in a riptide. They had a big swell going, and to hear somebody scream like that, it's something I've never heard before, where somebody was in serious shape. And so I did, and I tell people what any surfer would do, and I'm a surfer, but I haven't surfed for a while, and so there's some boards stored downstairs. I grabbed a board and ran out in my I wore to work that day and paddled out and helped the guy out. But it was
how old?
He was 15, and I saw that he got caught in this riptide and was out there and struggling. There's rocks, and he was trying to grab onto the rocks, and it was a pretty dangerous situation for him. So I paddled out, and of course, I'm 60 years old and out of shape, and as I'm paddling out, I'm wondering if I got enough gas to get out there. But fortunately, I did, and he grabbed on the board, and the rip current kind of took us around.
Do you think did you possibly save his life?
Well, I think he was in a tough, he was in a scary situation, and I was there to help him. So maybe I did save his life, but
so you bring him to shore, and was anybody else there, or what?
There was people on shore, and then someone had called 911, and then the lifeguards and paramedics had showed up right after we got in.
All right, and then you just you didn't even get his name, right? Or
Patrick.
Patrick,
Yeah.
okay.
And he's from Washington, D.C., and he was out here on vacation, so not used to those rip currents. And if you ever been caught in one, your instinct is to swim in, and of course you get pulled out, and people kind of panic. Rightfully. I mean, I see that why he would, if you're not used to that. And then,
So you handed him off to the paramedics.
Yeah.
And then you just.
And then I got dressed and we went out to dinner because we were late for our dinner reservations.
My gosh. All right, and you didn't blare this out, right? This was found out, it's not like you publicized this, but then people found out about it.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who knows how to surf would have done that, because when you surf, you know how to paddle out against the waves.
Great.
Yeah.
And that's it for now. Thanks again to my guest, Tom Tait. You can watch this show and past shows at pbsocal.org or rickreiff.com. You can also catch our shows in our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by.
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Chapman University is a proud sponsor of Inside OC and community programming.